Welcome back to Global. I'm John Sopel. Now, how much water do you use every day? The amount varies enormously depending on where in the world you live and how much water is actually available to you. And to increase awareness of the value of water, people around the globe are being encouraged to turn their taps off this Saturday to mark World Water Day. Now, as one of our most valuable resources, you'd expect people to treat access to water very seriously indeed. Could it, though, lead to international conflict? Well, Peter Gleick joins me from Oakland, California. He is president of the not-for-profit organisation Pacific Institute and director of their water programme. And Mark Zeitoun is the director of the Water Security Research Centre at the University of East Anglia here in the United Kingdom. Mark Zeitoun, let me come to you first of all. How much is water being used as a source of kind of almost a weapon to use against your neighbours, people you're hostile to?
If you look around the globe, you see a lot of examples of that, unfortunately. Water can be used as a tool for conflict, for instance, in the West Bank these days, where water is provided to Israeli settlers to encourage them to settle the land. It's also denied to Palestinians in certain areas of the West Bank so that they will leave the land. And so that's a very clear example of where water is used for political or military purposes.
And I think we saw the same thing again with what happened to the Marsh Arabs in southern Iraq when Saddam Hussein felt they had been part of the uprising to remove him from power.
That's right. Those marshes were drained ostensibly for health reasons, but obviously to displace a lot of those people living there who were opposed to the regime at the time.
Peter Gleick, how do you get people to take water use, water conservation more seriously?
Well, it's true. We take water for granted. We turn on our taps and out it comes, although that's certainly not true for a billion people worldwide who don't have access to safe water. But one of the things that raises awareness about water is the extremes of the weather and the climate that we're seeing. When we have very severe droughts, when we have very severe floods, people take a little different look at water resources. And certainly in the western United States right now, we're in an incredibly severe drought. And there's growing attention to how we use water, how to use water more efficiently, how to use water in a different way than we used it in the 20th century when we didn't really care about scarcity or didn't know that we ought to care about scarcity.
But do you think that, you talk about where you are in California, you drive through the sort of bowl of California, it's where all the fruit growers are. Are they going to stop growing fruit?
Well, California is a wonderful place to grow food. We have great crops, we have great climate, we have great soils, and often we have enough water. But the truth is, we no longer have enough water for everyone to do everything that we want, especially as inefficiently as we've been doing it. We're not going to stop growing food in California, but there are going to be limits on the kinds of things we grow, how efficiently we grow them, the kinds of technology for irrigation that we use. There just is no longer enough water for everyone to do what we want. We're reaching, in many ways, peak water, and not just in the western United States, but in increasing parts of the world, we're running into limits on what we can do.
And Peter, do you think the risk of conflict is growing?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We do a lot of work here at the Pacific Institute on international conflicts over water. We maintain something called the Water Conflict Chronology, which is a list of water conflicts going back 4,500 years. And those risks seem to be growing, not shrinking. And they're not growing country to country. We have mechanisms, diplomacy, negotiations, treaties to try and reduce those risks. But they do seem to be growing at the subnational level. Conflicts between states, between farmers and cities, between different users upstream and downstream. And I think those risks are growing rather than shrinking as the climate changes, as population grows, as demands for water grow.
And Mark Zeitoun, I'm sure you would share that analysis, but it's interesting, isn't it? It's not always just drought that leads to water shortage, as you were describing a moment ago.
Certainly, there is, as Peter says, the concerns about physical water scarcity, but probably more important and more related to conflicts is social scarcity. That's when the water that does exist isn't distributed properly or equitably. And you see greater examples of that all around the world. For instance, in California taking water from other states upstream and denying it or using it all before it ends up in Mexico, for example. You see the same sorts of inequitable distribution, to put it mildly, on the Nile River between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers between Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, and certainly contributing to the political conflicts there.
So do you believe there could be a war in future which is over water and access to it?
I'm not sure that's the best question to ask. Men will go to war for 100 different reasons. Water will be one of those reasons. Certainly tensions over water, if you're downstream like Iraq is from Turkey these days, it's just going to contribute to the political conflict and the military conflict, even if it's not the main source of that conflict. So probably the better question to ask is, how do these mostly non-violent water conflicts contribute to the political conflicts? And then how do we address those? And as Peter said, I think through international water law and diplomacy is certainly the way forward.
Okay, both of you, thank you very much indeed. Peter Gleick there in Oakland and Mark Zeitoun in East Anglia. Very good, very interesting discussion. Thanks ever so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks.